analyzed what he could have done differently, and constructed elaborate fantasies about the company failing without him. His inability to let go wasn't just affecting his job search, it was poisoning his relationships, his sleep, and his sense of self-worth. It wasn't until a friend recommended Marcus Aurelius's Meditations that Michael discovered one of the most liberating truths in Stoic philosophy: the art of letting go. The ancient Stoics understood that attachment to outcomes, people, possessions, and even our own plans is the primary source of human suffering. They didn't advocate indifference or emotional numbness. Instead, they taught a sophisticated form of engaged detachment that allows us to care deeply while holding lightly. Marcus Aurelius, who faced the constant threat of losing his empire, his health, and his life, wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." This wasn't philosophical abstraction for him. It was practical wisdom for navigating a world where everything he valued could disappear without warning. He understood that our suffering comes not from loss itself, but from our resistance to the natural flow of change. The Stoics taught that everything in life operates on what they called the cosmic cycle, a natural rhythm of emergence, growth, decline, and renewal that governs everything from seasons to civilizations to individual lives. Fighting this cycle is like trying to stop the tide with your bare hands. Exhausting, futile, and ultimately self-destructive. Seneca, who experienced both tremendous wealth and political exile, mastered the art of letting go through direct experience. When Emperor Nero confiscated his property and banished him from Rome, Seneca wrote, "Every change of fortune brings either fear or hope, but what difference does it make if the outcome is temporary? For all things are temporary." He had learned to find freedom in acceptance rather than resistance. Epictetus, who literally lost his physical freedom as a slave, taught that our attachments are often disguised forms of control. We believe that holding tightly to relationships, possessions, or outcomes will make us secure, but this grasping actually increases our vulnerability. True security comes from developing the inner resources to thrive regardless of external circumstances. The practice of letting go operates on multiple levels. First, there's letting go of outcomes, releasing our attachment to specific results while maintaining our commitment to effort and excellence. Michael discovered this when he stopped obsessing about his former company's performance and started focusing on what he could create next. His energy shifted from resentment to possibility. Second, there's letting go of past versions of ourselves. The Stoics understood that clinging to who we used to be prevents us from becoming who we're meant to be. Michael had to release his identity as the marketing guy who built that company to discover new aspects of himself. The consultant, the mentor, the entrepreneur he could become. Third, there's letting go of other people's choices and opinions. We cannot control how others treat us, what they think of us, or whether they appreciate our contributions. The Stoics taught that trying to control others' responses is like trying to make someone else hungry by eating food yourself, a category error that creates unnecessary suffering. Marcus Aurelius practiced a daily exercise he called morning reflection on impermanence. He would remind himself that everything he valued, his health, his relationships, his responsibilities, was temporary. This wasn't morbid pessimism but liberating realism that helped him appreciate what he had while preparing mentally for inevitable change. The art of letting go also applies to our mistakes and regrets. Seneca wrote, "What is past is gone and cannot be recalled." When Michael finally stopped replaying his corporate experience, searching for what he could have done differently, he freed enormous mental energy for more productive pursuits. The Stoics taught that we honor our experiences by learning from them, not by endlessly reliving them. One of the most powerful aspects of letting go is creating space for new possibilities. When we release our grip on how things should be, we become available to how they actually are, and to opportunities we couldn't see while focused on our attachments. Michael's forced career transition, once he stopped resisting it, opened doors to consulting work that was more fulfilling and better aligned with his values than his corporate role had ever been. The Stoics distinguished between detachment and indifference. Detachment means caring deeply while holding lightly, being fully engaged in the process while releasing attachment to specific outcomes. Indifference means not caring at all. A detached parent loves their child completely while accepting that the child will make their own choices and face their own consequences. An indifferent parent simply doesn't care. Practical letting go begins with small, daily practices. When you're stuck in traffic, practice letting go of your arrival time and focus on the present moment. When someone doesn't respond to your text immediately, practice letting go of their response timeline. When a project doesn't go as planned, practice letting go of your original vision while remaining committed to your best effort. The Stoics also taught negative visualization, mentally rehearsing loss as a way of both appreciating what we have and preparing for inevitable change. This isn't pessimism but practical wisdom. By imagining the temporary nature of our blessings, we develop both gratitude for the present and resilience for the future. Here's your practical implementation. Identify one thing you've been holding on to too tightly: a past hurt, a specific outcome, someone else's approval, or an outdated version of yourself. Spend 10 minutes writing about what you might gain by letting go of this attachment. What energy would be freed up? What new possibilities might emerge? Remember Marcus Aurelius's wisdom. Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate associates you. The art of letting go isn't about caring less. It's about loving more freely. Habit 7. The Priority Compass. Carmen, a 42-year-old working mother in San Antonio, felt like she was drowning in everyone else's demands. Her mornings began with her teenage daughter's crisis about a school project, followed by urgent emails from her boss about a client presentation, then a call from her elderly father asking for help with his medical appointments. By 10 a.m., she had already said yes to 3 different people's priorities while completely abandoning her own. Her days were a constant juggling act of other people's emergencies, leaving her feeling exhausted, resentful, and disconnected from anything that truly mattered to her. The wake-up call came during a particularly chaotic week when Carmen realized she had spent 40 hours responding to everyone else's needs but hadn't devoted a single hour to her own health, relationships, or personal goals. She was living everyone's life except her own. This realization led her to discover one of the most transformative Stoic practices, the discipline of clear priorities, learning to distinguish between what's urgent and what's important, and having the courage to focus on what truly matters. The ancient Stoics understood that time and energy are our most precious resources, and how we invest them determines not just our effectiveness but our character. They recognized that without clear priorities, we become reactive rather than proactive, scattered rather than focused, and ultimately frustrated rather than fulfilled. Marcus Aurelius, who had to balance the demands of governing an empire with his commitment to philosophical growth, wrote in his personal journal, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." and it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. He understood that our distress often comes not from having too much to do, but from lacking clarity about what deserves our attention. The Roman emperor developed a practice he called morning intention setting, where he would begin each day by identifying his core responsibilities and values. He would ask himself, what are the few things that, if accomplished today, would make this day meaningful? This wasn't about productivity hacking, it was about aligning his daily actions with his deepest values. Seneca, who juggled roles as philosopher, playwright, businessman, and political advisor, mastered the art of priority setting through painful experience. In his letters to Lucilius, he wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." He learned that busy doesn't equal important, and urgent doesn't equal essential. The Stoics taught that most of our stress comes from what they called category errors, treating unimportant things as if they were vital and treating other people's priorities as if they were our own. Epictetus reminded his students, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. For him, embodying philosophy meant making choices that reflected his values rather than simply reacting to external demands. When Carmen began applying Stoic priority principles, she first had to identify what truly mattered to her. This required honest self-examination. What kind of mother did she want to be? What kind of professional? What kind of daughter, friend, and human being? She realized that her constant reactivity was actually taking her further from these ideals, not closer to them. The Stoics recommended a powerful exercise, imagining you have only 1 year to live. What would you focus on? What would you stop doing? What relationships would you prioritize? This isn't morbid thinking, it's clarity thinking. When we remember that our time is finite, we naturally become more selective about how we spend it. Carmen discovered that her people-pleasing habit was actually a form of selfishness disguised as service. By saying yes to everyone else's non-essential requests, she was saying no to her own essential responsibilities. Her exhaustion wasn't serving anyone well, not her family, not her colleagues, and certainly not herself. Marcus Aurelius taught that we must distinguish between what belongs to us and what belongs to others. Other people's poor planning, anxiety, and urgent requests don't automatically become our responsibilities. We can be compassionate and helpful without absorbing everyone else's chaos into our own lives. The practice of clear priorities begins with what the Stoics called the discipline of desire, learning to want what serves our highest good rather than what feels urgent in the moment. Carmen began asking herself, is this request aligned with my values and responsibilities, or is it just urgent to someone else? This single question transformed her ability to make conscious choices rather than automatic reactions. Seneca developed a time audit practice that Carmen found invaluable. At the end of each day, she would categorize her activities into 3 groups: essential, aligned with her core values and responsibilities; important, valuable but not critical; and urgent, demanding immediate attention but not necessarily meaningful. She discovered that most of her time was being consumed by the urgent category while the essential category was being neglected. The Stoics also taught the importance of saying no with grace and clarity. Epictetus advised, don't consent to be hurt and you won't be hurt. This is the only sure way to be secure. Carmen learned that saying no to good things allows us to say yes to great things. She developed scripts for declining requests. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not able to take this on right now, or that sounds valuable, but it doesn't align with my current priorities. One of Carmen's most powerful discoveries was that clear priorities actually improved her relationships. Instead of being a scattered, resentful helper, she became a focused, intentional contributor. Her daughter learned to manage her own projects instead of relying on last-minute maternal rescues. Her boss began respecting her boundaries because she communicated them clearly and consistently. The Stoics understood that priorities aren't just about time management, they're about identity management. What we choose to focus on shapes who we become. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it." Our priorities reflect our thoughts, and our thoughts shape our character. Here's your practical implementation. For the next week, begin each day by identifying your top 3 priorities, the things that, if accomplished, would make the day meaningful. Before saying yes to any request, ask yourself, does this align with my priorities, or is it just urgent to someone else? Notice how this simple filter transforms your daily experience. Remember Seneca's wisdom, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Clear priorities help us end the chaos of reactive living and begin the intentional life we truly want. Habit 8. Forging strength through failure. Thomas, a 46-year-old restaurant owner in Dallas, had always been the type of person who bounced back from setbacks. He'd weathered economic downturns, difficult employees, and challenging health inspectors with resilience and optimism. But when his flagship restaurant, his life's work of 12 years, was forced to close permanently due to a perfect storm of supply chain issues, staffing shortages, and a neighborhood development project that blocked customer access, Thomas felt something he'd never experienced before: complete defeat. For months after the closure, Thomas couldn't bring himself to even drive past the empty building. He felt like a failure as a business owner, a provider, and a leader. The hundreds of small decisions that had led to this moment played on repeat in his mind. He began questioning everything: his judgment, his abilities, even his worth as a person. It wasn't until his teenage son asked him, "Dad, what are you going to teach me about handling failure?" that Thomas realized he had a choice. Let this setback define him, or let it refine him. This moment of clarity led Thomas to discover one of the most counterintuitive truths in Stoic philosophy. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the raw material from which genuine strength is forged. The ancient Stoics held a radical perspective on failure that completely reframes how we experience setbacks. Rather than seeing failure as evidence of inadequacy, they viewed it as essential curriculum in the school of character development. Marcus Aurelius, who faced military defeats, political betrayals, and personal losses throughout his reign, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This wasn't positive thinking or motivational platitudes. It was a fundamental understanding of how growth actually occurs. The Stoics recognized that comfort and ease don't build character. Challenge and adversity do. They understood that our greatest failures often contain our most valuable lessons, but only if we're willing to extract the wisdom rather than simply endure the pain. Epictetus, who experienced the ultimate failure of losing his physical freedom as a slave, taught that external circumstances cannot truly harm us unless we allow them to corrupt our character. He told his students, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This wasn't denial of real consequences. It was recognition that our response to failure shapes us more than the failure itself. Seneca, who experienced spectacular political downfall when he fell from favor with Emperor Nero, wrote extensively about what he called the uses of adversity. In his letters, he observed, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." He understood that failure often signals not the end of our story, but the beginning of a new chapter, if we have the courage to write it. The Stoics taught that failure serves 3 essential functions in human development. First, It reveals our true character by stripping away pretense and forcing us to confront who we really are beneath our successes and achievements. Second, it teaches us lessons that prosperity never could, because we only truly learn when the stakes are high and the consequences are real. Third, it builds resilience by proving that we can survive what we thought would destroy us. When Thomas began applying Stoic principles to his business failure, he started by asking different questions. Instead of "Why did this happen to me?" he asked, "What can this teach me?" Instead of "How could I have been so stupid?" he asked, "What wisdom can I extract from this experience?" Instead of "I'm a failure," he asked, "How can this failure make me stronger?" The answers that emerged surprised him. His restaurant's closure had taught him about the importance of financial reserves, the value of diversified revenue streams, and the necessity of adapting to changing circumstances. More importantly, it had shown him that his identity wasn't tied to his business success. He was still a capable leader, a loving father, and a valuable member of his community, regardless of his restaurant's fate. Marcus Aurelius practiced what he called obstacle reframing, deliberately looking for the growth opportunity embedded in every setback. When faced with a difficult situation, he would ask, "How can this challenge strengthen my character? What virtue does this situation call me to develop?" This practice transformed obstacles from problems to be avoided into training equipment for character development. The Stoics also taught the importance of extracting specific, actionable lessons from failure rather than wallowing in general self-condemnation. Thomas began keeping what he called a failure journal, documenting not just what went wrong, but what he learned from each mistake. He discovered that his most painful failures often contained his most valuable insights. One of the most liberating Stoic teachings about failure is that it's temporary and specific, not permanent and universal. Seneca wrote, "A setback has often cleared the way for greater prosperity." The Stoics understood that failure in one area doesn't negate competence in others, and failure at one time doesn't predict failure at all times. Thomas's perspective shift became evident when he started mentoring other struggling business owners. Instead of hiding his failure, he began sharing it as a teaching tool. He discovered that his vulnerability and hard-won wisdom were more valuable to others than his previous successes had ever been. His failure had transformed him from someone who succeeded to someone who understood both success and failure, a much more complete and helpful human being. The Stoics distinguished between what they called preferred indifference, things like success, health, and reputation that are generally preferable but don't determine our worth, and true goods, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance that constitute genuine human flourishing. Failure often strips away the preferred indifference and forces us to develop the true goods. Epictetus taught his students to practice negative visualization, imagining potential failures and setbacks as a way of building psychological resilience before they occur. This wasn't pessimism but preparation. By mentally rehearsing how we would respond to failure, we're less likely to be devastated when it actually happens. Here's your practical implementation. Think of a recent failure or setback you've experienced. Write down 3 specific lessons you learned from this experience and how they've made you stronger or wiser. Then identify one way you can use this hard-won wisdom to help someone else facing a similar challenge. Remember Marcus Aurelius's profound insight: the universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Your failures don't define you, your response to them does. Habit 9. The Detachment Shield. Kevin, a 37-year-old software developer in San Jose, had always been sensitive to criticism and conflict. When his startup's mobile app received harsh reviews on the App Store, when colleagues questioned his technical decisions in team meetings, or when social media discussions about his industry turned negative, Kevin felt every word like a personal attack. He would spend hours crafting perfect responses to online critics, lose sleep replaying workplace conversations, and constantly monitor what people were saying about his work and his company. The breaking point came when an influential tech blogger wrote a scathing review of his team's latest product release. Instead of focusing on the valid technical feedback buried in the criticism, Kevin became consumed with the blogger's tone, motivations, and fairness. He spent an entire weekend crafting a point-by-point rebuttal, soliciting opinions from friends, and obsessing over every comment on the article. By Monday morning, he was emotionally exhausted and no closer to actually improving his product. That's when Kevin realized he needed to learn one of the most crucial Stoic skills, mental detachment. The ancient Stoics understood that in a world full of noise, opinions, and external chaos, our peace of mind depends not on controlling what others think or say, but on developing what they called mental detachment. The ability to remain centered and clear-headed regardless of external circumstances. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire where every decision was scrutinized and criticized by senators, citizens, and historians, wrote in his personal journal how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself. This wasn't about ignoring feedback or becoming antisocial, it was about maintaining internal stability while engaging with an unpredictable external world. Epictetus, who taught that we cannot control what others think or say about us but can always control our response, put it simply, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. He understood that mental detachment is the shield that protects our inner peace from external storms. The Stoics taught that most of our emotional suffering comes from what they called externalization, allowing external events, opinions, and circumstances to determine our internal state. When we give other people's words the power to disrupt our peace, we are essentially handing control of our emotional well-being to strangers, critics, and circumstances beyond our influence. Mental detachment operates on several levels. First, there's detachment from outcomes, being fully committed to excellent work while releasing attachment to specific results or recognition. Second, there's detachment from others' opinions, caring about feedback that serves growth while ignoring commentary that serves only drama. Third, there's detachment from external validation, finding confidence and worth from internal sources rather than external approval. When Kevin began practicing mental detachment, he started with what the Stoics called the view from above, imagining himself observing situations from a detached, elevated perspective rather than being emotionally immersed in them. When he received criticism, instead of immediately feeling attacked, he would pause and ask, what in this feedback is useful for improvement? What is simply opinion or emotion? How would a wise, detached observer respond? Seneca, who navigated the dangerous waters of Roman politics where a single misstep could mean exile or death, mastered the art of engaged detachment. He wrote, every change of fortune brings either fear or hope. But what good does it do to be hopeful or fearful about things that are uncertain? He learned to participate fully in life while maintaining emotional equilibrium regardless of external circumstances. The practice of mental detachment doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. The Stoics distinguished between detachment and indifference. Detachment means caring deeply about what matters while not being controlled by external reactions to your caring. Indifference means not caring at all. A detached leader cares about their team's success but doesn't let criticism derail their decision-making. An indifferent leader simply doesn't care about outcomes or feedback. One of Kevin's most powerful discoveries was learning to separate signal from noise in external input. The Stoics taught that most external commentary falls into three categories: useful information that can guide improvement, emotional projection that reveals more about the speaker than the subject, and random noise that serves no constructive purpose. Mental detachment allows us to extract the signal while filtering out the noise. Marcus Aurelius practiced daily what he called morning armor, preparing mentally for the various opinions, criticisms, and external pressures he would encounter throughout the day. He would remind himself, "Today I will meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. But I won't be surprised or disturbed, for I can't imagine a world without such people." This wasn't cynicism but realistic preparation. By anticipating external challenges to his peace of mind, Marcus Aurelius was less likely to be thrown off balance when they occurred. Kevin adopted a similar practice, spending 5 minutes each morning mentally preparing for potential criticism or conflict, visualizing himself responding with detached wisdom rather than emotional reactivity. The Stoics also taught the importance of choosing your inputs consciously. Seneca wrote, "Nothing, Lucilius, is ours except time." He understood that what we allow into our minds shapes our inner world. Kevin realized he had been consuming criticism and negative commentary like junk food, readily available, immediately stimulating, but ultimately harmful to his mental health. Mental detachment becomes especially crucial in our hyper-connected age, where social media algorithms are designed to provoke emotional reactions and where anyone can publish opinions about anything. The Stoics would have recognized these platforms as exactly the kind of external noise that requires careful filtering. Epictetus taught his students a powerful detachment technique. Before reacting to any external event or opinion, pause and ask, "Is this within my control or outside my control? If it's outside my control, how can I respond in a way that strengthens rather than weakens me?" Kevin began applying this filter to everything from App Store reviews to workplace feedback to social media discussions. He discovered that most of what had been disturbing his peace was actually outside his control and therefore not worth his emotional investment. Here's your practical implementation. For the next week, when you encounter criticism, negative opinions, or external chaos, pause and ask yourself, what in this situation is useful information? What is just noise? How can I respond from wisdom rather than reactivity? Notice how this simple practice transforms your emotional response to external challenges. Remember Marcus Aurelius's wisdom: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Habit 10. The Daily Purpose Anchor. Emma, a 41-year-old marketing consultant in Chicago, used to wake up each morning feeling like she was being launched into a day without direction. Her phone would buzz with client requests, her calendar would be packed with meetings that felt important but left her feeling empty, and by evening she'd wonder what she had actually accomplished that mattered. Despite being professionally successful and financially secure, Emma felt adrift, going through the motions of a busy life without any real sense of meaning or direction. The turning point came during a particularly hectic week when Emma realized she couldn't remember the last time she had woken up excited about her day. She was living reactively, responding to other people's priorities while her own sense of purpose remained buried under layers of obligation and routine. That weekend, while reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, she discovered a practice that would transform not just her mornings, but her entire relationship with time and meaning, setting a daily purpose. The ancient Stoics understood that without clear intention, we drift through life like ships without anchors, at the mercy of every current and wind. They recognized that meaning isn't something we find, it's something we create through conscious choice and daily commitment to what matters most. Marcus Aurelius, despite carrying the enormous responsibility of governing the Roman Empire, began each day by setting clear intentions about how he wanted to show up in the world. In his personal journal, he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." This wasn't just morning philosophy, it was practical preparation for living with purpose regardless of external circumstances. Marcus Aurelius understood that without intentional direction, we become reactive rather than proactive, scattered rather than focused, and ultimately frustrated rather than fulfilled. Seneca, who balanced roles as philosopher, playwright, businessman, and political advisor, wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Every day is a step toward eternity." He understood that our daily choices, guided by clear purpose, compound over time to create the life we actually live. Without daily intention, we may look back years later and wonder where our time and energy actually went. The Stoics taught that purpose operates on multiple levels. There's our overarching life purpose, our deepest values, and the legacy we want to leave. There's our seasonal purpose, the particular focus or growth we're committed to during specific periods of our lives. And there's our daily purpose, the specific intention that gives each day meaning and direction. When Emma began practicing daily purpose setting, she discovered that even 5 minutes of morning intention setting could transform her entire day. Instead of waking up and immediately checking emails or social media, which put her in reactive mode from the moment she opened her eyes, she began asking herself, "What do I want to accomplish today that would make this day meaningful? How do I want to show up in my relationships and work? What would make me feel proud of this day when I reflect on it tonight?" Marcus Aurelius emphasized that daily purpose isn't about grand gestures or major accomplishments, it's about bringing intention to ordinary moments. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When we begin each day with purposeful thoughts, we set the stage for purposeful actions. Emma's daily purposes weren't always elaborate. Sometimes it was, "Today I will listen more than I speak in meetings." Other days it was, "I will express genuine appreciation to at least one person on my team." During stressful periods, her purpose might be, "I will maintain calm composure regardless of what challenges arise." The key wasn't the size of the purpose but the clarity of the intention. The Stoics understood that daily purpose serves as both compass and anchor. As a compass, it provides direction when we face decisions throughout the day. As an anchor, it keeps us grounded in what matters most when external pressures try to pull us off course. Epictetus taught that we should approach each day like an athlete preparing for competition. Just as athletes visualize their performance and set specific goals before competing, we should mentally prepare for our day by clarifying our intentions and values. He told his students, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." Daily purpose is how we embody our deepest values in practical action. Emma discovered that daily purpose setting created a positive feedback loop. When she woke up with clear intention, she was more likely to make choices aligned with her values throughout the day. When she made value-aligned choices, she felt more satisfied and energized. This positive energy made it easier to set meaningful purposes the following day. The practice becomes especially powerful during difficult periods. When Emma's largest client unexpectedly terminated their contract, her first instinct was to spiral into anxiety and reactive job seeking. But her daily purpose practice provided stability. That morning, instead of panicking, she set the intention, "Today I will respond to this challenge with grace and strategic thinking." The single intention transformed her response from reactive scrambling to proactive planning. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about what he called morning reflection, not just reviewing the day ahead, but connecting daily activities to deeper purpose. He would ask himself, how can today's responsibilities serve something greater than myself? How can I use today's challenges to build character and wisdom? The Stoics also taught that daily purpose should be flexible rather than rigid. Seneca wrote, "Every change of fortune brings either fear or hope." When circumstances change unexpectedly, our purpose provides stability while allowing us to adapt our approach. Emma learned that her daily purposes were like North Stars, providing consistent direction while allowing for course corrections as needed. One of Emma's most significant discoveries was that daily purpose improved her relationships. When she set intentions like, "I will be fully present in conversations today," or "I will look for ways to support my colleagues," her interactions became more meaningful and her professional relationships deepened. The practice of daily purpose also creates what psychologists call implementation intentions, specific plans for how we'll respond to likely scenarios. Instead of hoping we'll make good choices, we pre-commit to specific behaviors aligned with our values. Here's your practical implementation. Starting tomorrow, spend 5 minutes each morning asking yourself, what would make today meaningful? How do I want to show up in my relationships and responsibilities? What specific intention will guide my choices today? Write down your daily purpose and refer to it when facing decisions throughout the day. Remember Marcus Aurelius's profound insight, confine yourself to the present. Daily purpose helps us make the present moment meaningful while building the life we truly want to live. As we reach the end of our journey through these 10 transformative habits, let's return to where we began, with Sarah, sitting in her car outside that Chicago office building, feeling overwhelmed and emotionally drained. Imagine if Sarah had these Stoic tools at her disposal. Instead of gripping her steering wheel in anxiety, she might have taken a moment to identify what was actually within her control that morning. Rather than reacting impulsively to each crisis text and email, she could have practiced the inner pause, choosing her responses from wisdom rather than panic. Picture Sarah embracing radical honesty about her patterns, recognizing that her constant reactivity was a choice, not an inevitability. Imagine her spending 5 minutes each evening reflecting on her day, extracting lessons from challenges and celebrating her growth. See her practicing gratitude for the job that provides for her family, the daughter who trusts her with problems, and the mother who calls because she cares. The 10 habits we've explored aren't just ancient philosophy, they're practical tools for modern emotional resilience. When you master your circle of control, you stop wasting energy on factors beyond your influence and channel your power where it can make a real difference. When you practice the inner pause, you transform from someone who reacts to life into someone who responds with wisdom. When you embrace radical self-honesty, you build authentic strength rather than fragile pretense. Daily reflection turns your experiences into wisdom, while gratitude transforms your perspective from scarcity to abundance. The art of letting go frees you from the weight of the past, and clear priorities ensure your energy serves your deepest values. When you learn to forge strength through failure, setbacks become stepping stones rather than roadblocks. Mental detachment shields you from external chaos, while daily purpose anchors every morning in meaning. These habits work synergistically, each one strengthening the others. Your morning purpose setting makes it easier to identify your circle of control. Your evening reflection deepens your self-honesty and gratitude practice. Your ability to let go makes it easier to maintain mental detachment from criticism and chaos. Together, they create what the Stoics called the inner citadel, an unshakable foundation of emotional strength that no external circumstance can touch. The ancient Stoics understood something our modern world often forgets. True strength isn't about avoiding difficulty or controlling outcomes. It's about developing the inner resources to thrive regardless of external circumstances. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your transformation begins with a single choice. Which of these 10 habits will you commit to practicing this week? Perhaps you'll start by identifying your circle of control each morning, or practicing the inner pause before your next emotional reaction. Maybe you'll begin evening reflection or set a daily purpose. The specific starting point matters less than the commitment to begin. Remember, as Seneca taught us, a good character is not formed in a week or a month. It is created little by little, day by day. These habits aren't quick fixes. They're lifetime practices that compound into extraordinary emotional resilience and wisdom. The Stoics have given us a timeless roadmap for inner strength. Now it's time to walk the path. Your emotionally stronger self is waiting on the other side of consistent practice. Start today, start small, but most importantly, start. In closing, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey through Stoic philosophy. If you found value in this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this content with others who might benefit from these insights. By spreading the wisdom of Stoicism, we can create a community of individuals committed to personal growth and resilience. Your support helps us continue to share these important messages and empower others on their journeys.